All right. So last time we were together, or back in February, we were talking about getting it right and doing things right. It's more than being right. Remember depends on which side of the fence you're on, whether that was a 6 or a 9, that kind of stuff. And I know you remember my lovely sink. Plumbing underneath my kitchen sink. So that's what it looked like originally. And then I showed you the picture where I had cleaned all the back of it up and I took care of all of the piping. But today we want to talk about the waste. And I asked you guys, how would you do this right? Because we wanted to get rid of that, you can't see it here, but that little accordion old dealie right there. So I asked a bunch of you and I got 4 or 5 different responses from everybody in the room here. And here it is today, because I did it. These are 2 different pictures, it's the same thing, just 2 different angles, so you can see what happened here. I believe, if I remember, that Jeffrey was the one who said that he would do it this way, and a couple of you all agreed with him. In other words, I took the right-hand sink and I came straight down into the P-trap, and I took the left-hand sink and I just angled it in with a sweep in here. I believe it was Lagonda that said, why don't you just try to change out the accordion thing in here? And I couldn't do that because I would have had so many nuts so close together that I couldn't make that turn in there. So I went this route. If you'll notice, I hard piped this. Everybody understand what I mean by hard pipe? I used 1.5 inch Schedule 40 PVC. Why did I do that?
Less leaks.
I did it, number 1, for less leaking connections, and number 2, I don't know if I've told you this before, I think I might have mentioned it, I compost. I have a 2-gallon bucket underneath the right-hand side of the sink. Celery stalks, potato skins, onion skins, food scraps. And I recycle, I compost, I bury them in my garden and I turn it over in the earth. I put my bucket on the right-hand side. And I was afraid that if I had that connection in here and I put that bucket in there, that I might break seal. Just because I got in a hurry putting my compost bucket back under there when I dumped some stuff into it, eggshells and coffee grinds and that kind of stuff. So I decided to hard pipe it. But that's not actually right, but it was right for me, is the point. So let's talk a little bit more about waste. And you can see that I actually even got a clean out plug on the bottom of my P-trap right here, just in case I ever dropped anything down it. I don't wear rings. I'm not worried about getting toothbrushes down my kitchen sink or anything, but at least I got a place to clean my trap out if I need to. So anyway, so what we want to do is we want to talk about waste piping today.
Ed,
Yes?
so instead of hard piping, you're saying you took out the accordion? Is that what you mean by that?
I took out the accordion, you don't see it anymore.
Right. So I mean, if you didn't hard pipe, what would you have done instead?
I would have used the regular 1.5 inch thin PVC with the lock nuts on it. I could have done this whole thing out of this stuff. I hard piped it so I wouldn't knock it by putting that compost bucket in there. Hard is because it's all solvent welded. It's glued up. We're gonna get to that in just a sec. So there's basically 4 different types of of waste piping that are out there. So the first one, I don't know if any of you have ever seen. But have you ever seen copper waste pipes here in Atlanta?
Not in a while.
Has been. I mean, not in a while, you're absolutely right. I remember seeing one on one of the first jobs that I did when I worked here because we put in a new shower for a customer and she had a copper P-trap underneath her house that went into cast iron. So copper we generally don't see, and so we don't really have to deal with it when we're talking about waste pipes, which brings me to the next one, which is cast iron. We don't see a lot of cast iron, but it was very popular back in the day, in the 40s and 50s particularly. A lot of houses on the inside of the perimeter have still got cast iron piping in them. It was pretty cheap and inexpensive at the time to manufacture cast iron pipes. The beauty of cast iron pipe is that it's damn near silent. You can't, the walls are so thick that you can't hear water running through it when you flush the toilet. I mean, that was the beauty of it. But anyway, we generally run into cast iron occasionally. However, estimators know that if we run into cast iron and we're doing a remodel, for example, or we have to touch this stuff, we're going to put the money in for a plumber and not for lead techs to change out cast iron. Do you know what it takes to cut a piece of cast iron? I don't know, that special chain-like tool that you got to ratchet on that thing, and we don't really carry those. So we turn those over to plumbers, basically. They make a blade for it, and that's how I cut the one that I did on this copper to cast iron one. But that is only good for one cut. That's for damn sure. And it's a reciprocal, it's a Sawzall blade. It's about that big. And it's crusted like diamonds on the end of it. And it took me an hour to go through a 1.5-inch pipe. I mean, it was a bitch. Yeah, and it cost $40. What we do run into a lot more, depending on the age of the house, is acrylonolide butylene styrene, which is basically called ABS, all right? It's black PVC, all right? That's what ABS is. ABS is made from recycled plastic. ABS has not been put into new houses since the 80s in Atlanta. So, but if you've got houses in 70s, you'll see the black pipe in there. California is the only state that has outlawed ABS pipe. And the reason is because it's made of recycled plastic. And it deteriorates quicker than what we use today, which is, as you know, polyvinyl chloride, which is just regular PVC. All right. Waste piping. This we call glue. This is actually a solvent weld material. What it's doing is it's bonding the two types of plastic that you're joining together. All right, so we call it glue. This is primer. This is a good idea to use before you glue up the two ends of the pipes. Why? Because the primer starts to break down the chemical compounds in the PVC so that when the glue gets in there, it's loose enough and soft enough that once it dries, you have a good, tight, leak-proof weld. All right? So, I've got a piece of ABS pipe. I've got my primer. Please note, my drop cloth is down. Why?
One of our tables.
That purple crap gets everywhere.
This stains everything. Floors, fingers, countertops, underneath, and it goes everywhere. You can't open the lid without it going everywhere. And if you drip it, my towel now has that purple drop on it forever. So, end of the pipe, couple of swirls. All over the place. My connection inside. Couple of swirls. It's all in the inside of the top of the cap, that purple stuff. Nasty, nasty, nasty. I've got the blue here and I've got a clear solvent. The blue just dries a little bit quicker. That's all there is to it. The blue is also good for exterior use if you're doing Schedule 40 gray pipe, the NM pipe, if you're doing wires. Yes?
Question, Ed.
Uh-huh.
Since that product is used for PVC, say I got PVC trim or something and want to seal my 45.
Uh-huh.
Can I use that?
You can use the clear.
The-
Absolutely use the
Not the
clear.
blue.
Not the blue, use the clear. I bought the blue so that you could see it, you know, from sitting. And
The blue is waterproof.
the blue
You
is
can glue underwater with it, but it's also only for sewer pipe.
for sewer pipe, waste
And
pipe
every
only.
different color glue they have is for different pressured pipe.
Different pressure pipes, and that's correct. So, I got my primer on my pipes. I got my glue on the ABS.
You got purple on the floor.
I got purple on the floor. I'm getting blue all over the place. A little bit of a solid pressure, a little twist. Hold it just a second. And once that dries, I've got a weld. In about 5 minutes, I could try to pull this thing off, and it's not coming. I'm going to get a little clean. Now, what I just did is wrong.
I think he knows why.
This is ABS pipe. This is PVC pipe.
Gonna melt it.
That connection won't hold
Oh, wow.
because if you read the back of the bottle, do not use on ABS pipe. What you need to do on the ABS side, if you're joining PVC to ABS, is just to make sure that it's dust-free, no primer. But you do want to prime the connection that you're making. So off with my purple top again.
So prime the connection, not the pipe.
Not ABS.
PVC. You're going into
The black pipe doesn't get primed.
Okay.
ABS to PVC solvent is green.
Gotta look at the label.
Every
Every label, so you got CPVC, you got PVC,
How many different ones are you?
We're talking about waste pipe, so we're not talking about
Right.
CPVC.
but they might grab that glue on that.
That's correct. It's a goldish color, right? Yellow. Now, with my correct solvent, I'm green here, and I'm green in here. Because the green solvent is for ABS to PVC connections. And again, I just push it in, a little bit of a twist, hold it for a couple seconds, and that's a correct solvent between ABS and PVC pipe. I went to a job and there was a technician, his name was Eric. He hasn't been with us for quite some time. I remember Eric because he was about 4 foot nothing, a little black guy. He was really pretty. He had long eyelashes, if you remember, those of you who were here. I went in to take a look at him doing a job. And what he was doing was he had to make a connection where the customer had a leak in the pipes above their bedroom, their downstairs bedroom. And the leak came out where the ceiling fan was, and we had half of the ceiling taken out to find the leak in the pipe. And he had put the connections back together, ABS to PVC. And when I walked in, he was pressure tested, he was running the water through it, and it was dripping like a sieve. And he didn't have the green glue. And he had to take it back out apart, and I told him, you have to use the correct glue for the connection that you were trying to make. So, well, there it is. There's my house. This is before I moved in. This is ABS. I have ABS pipe in my house, 1974. And the guy that I bought the house from must have had a leak in the P-trap. And here you can see the green. So when I saw that, when I walked in to buy the house, I went, at least they used the right glue. I knew it wasn't going to be a leak. That's actually, you can't see it in this picture, but there's actually green up there. But you can see the primer. You know, he primed the pipes right, you see the purple, all that kind of stuff. The reason that they went with the purple primer is that in some states, that's a plumbing code requirement, is that they have to have a visual sense that the pipe was primed in a couple of states, 4 or 5 states in the country. And so the people at Odie who make the primer put dye in it. They put the most fierce color purple dye in the world in that damn thing. So that when the plumbing becomes inspected by the plumbing inspector, he's looking for the purple first to make sure that it was primed. That's not a code in Georgia, but we still have the purple primer. And you want to use it because, again, it softens the two materials, but don't use it on ABS. All right? Any questions?
I think that guy's name might have been Baruch.
No, it was Eric.
It was Eric. Yeah, it was Eric.
Eric, so I wouldn't have gone. And that wasn't my first.
I can't undo the blue, but I bet I would be able to in a while. But it would leak eventually.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Want to go over your? Want to go over the money?
Oh, you're going to talk about the silicone?
Was I going to talk about the silicone?
Yeah, I was waiting for you to talk about the washer.
Oh yeah. Okay. So, right. So
This ABS connection. I mean, we're going to run across this 1 out of 10.
we're going to run across the
other stuff
ABS
you
connection.
In front of you, we run out of 9 out of 10.
Right. So, remember when I was talking about I hard piped underneath my sink, and we know that we don't ever want to use the accordion stuff. right? So it's illegal. Even though it's readily available, we don't want to use this stuff. There is no combination that you can't do, whether you hard pipe something or use the nut connections. There's no possible combination that you can't do if you're coming out of the wall and trying to match up to the plumb line of your drain. It's always going to be a combination of, let's see, let me use that. If we're coming out of the wall here, this is the wall, the television's the wall, you have this play. You also have this play to come in and out of. So there's no way that you need that accordion thing to make your connection. You always have those two pivot points where you can come directly underneath the strainer or the drain. All right, so that's the first thing, because this is all movable, whether you hard pipe it or you use the nut connections.
Tailpiece can always be changed or
The
cut.
tailpiece can be changed, cut, added to, an extension put on it.
Will the price be different to a hard than using that right there?
I think the price is different in the material, but I don't think that the labor is really that different. I mean, it's sweeping the solvent on it, sweeping the glue on it, and priming it and all that kind of stuff, but still you've got to line it all up and put the nuts on and make sure that the washers are seated correctly, that go in between the stuff.
There's no benefit to hard piping it.
There's no benefit to hard piping it. Does it help with, was it my satisfaction that it wouldn't leak? Yeah, but my bigger concern is that I was going to knock it and not realize it, and then use the sink.
Because everybody has 3 times as much junk that
Yeah.
actually fits up there.
Yeah, I know.
The bad thing
Yeah.
about hard piping is once you hard pipe it, you're stuck.
You're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're definitely done.
If you make any
Like I say,
changes or have a
that's my whole point.
redo it all.
That was right for me. That was right for me to hard pipe. Is it quicker and easier just to use the nut connections? It probably is. Probably is. As long as you get that, you make sure that you're doing that, the connections correctly. So we've got, the standard sizes that this stuff is going to come in for the nut connection stuff is 1.5 inches and 1.25 inches. That's what's going to be sold throughout, in the bags, right? If you're doing a P-trap or any other kind of connection. When you're going into hard pipe, you're generally going in at the wall, because the hard pipe is definitely coming through the back wall of the cabinet and coming out. Then you need the connection that goes from the hard pipe into the PVC. So this happens to be an 1.25 inch one, and I have an 1.5 inch pipe, so I could put all right, so I'm going to weld that part of it. That's sticking out of the wall like this, and then coming through here, I don't have an 1.25 inch washer. These are all 1.5 inch washers, but I would have my 1.25 inch washer in here. And then coming out of the wall, as I'm screwing the nut, I'm holding that fast to where it needs to be. Then once I put my P-trap on it, I have that play, which is where I can go. And I have this that I can play with, the in and out like I was talking about. So there's no combination that you can't figure out.
A lot of those P-trap kits now are coming with the reducer from 1.5 inches to 4.25 inches.
Right.
Already built into the.
Yeah. Most of the time, I would say 9 times out of 10 we use 1.5 inch, whether it's a bathroom sink or a kitchen sink. Sometimes 1.25 inches, because 1.25 inches might be what you're dealing with already, and you'll have to go with it. But 1.5 inches has a little bit more volume that it can take, so we should be using 1.5 inches, I would say, for our piping. The other connection that I didn't talk about is the Fernco connection, which would have been just fine between, using these. If I was going from this pipe to this pipe, if they were the same size, Fernco connection comes in all different sizes. This is a 1.5 inch. They have them at 3 inches, 2 inches, all that kind of stuff. You just line them up. The thing about a Fernco is, I would recommend that you not use a flathead screwdriver to tighten these things up. Definitely get the nut driver, because that flathead screwdriver, these things, it slips on you so much, and you have to get these nice and tight. The other thing about the Fernco connection is that you want to make sure that that band, that this clamp here is all the way, that the pipe is halfway through the connection. Because if you start tightening this up and this pipe isn't in far enough, you're just going to wind up pinching it and it's going to be a leak point. So you want to make sure that your pipes that you're putting this connection over are no more than a half an inch apart from each other because of the clamp system. You don't want to have it on the inside right there and start tightening it down because it'll crimp on you and it'll probably leak. So you got to have that thing halfway through the Fernco connection.
Isn't it like 60 pounds of torque on that nut?
I don't know. I didn't look up the torque, but if you have that nut driver and you get it as tight. But if you've got that nut driver, it's like most things in plumbing. Everything goes to hand tight and then it's another quarter to half turn, right? When you're doing these nuts, you're going hand tight and then it's another quarter turn and that's what snugs it together. That's good for the toilet repairs that we do, for water connections and everything. Hand tight and another quarter to half turn to get it really good and snug. And then what do? We test. When I did my sink, underneath my sink, fill up the sink with water, let it sit there for 5 minutes, open up the drain, flush it out, watch for leaks. Do it again. Let it sit there for a couple minutes, wash it out, then run it. Check all of your connections over and over and over again. Chris has probably run to get some paper towels or some tissue paper. Yeah, see?
Not just for wiping your ass, boys.
Because that's our tester for leaks. Yeah, you were going to say something,
You
sorry.
only use those on a vertical pipe.
You can, that's correct. Fernco, the way, I was gonna say that when I got here. The only way you can use Fernco by code is this way. You can't use it that way. Only this way. Can't be horizontal.
Cause of downward flow. If it sits in the pipe,
Yeah.
it says leak.
I sure see a lot of it.
I know, hey, trust me, did it, right?
It worked.
Because I'm about to give you what Chris has done wrong and what you better not never fucking do.
It works, but doesn't.
Board didn't do on the last house.
Yeah, I know. A lot of guys do it, even plumbers.
Anybody want to get high? Come on up here for a minute.
Yeah, leave those open.
That's why I'm coming in. I'm gonna build on, I'm gonna give you guys a couple tips and, where add-ons happen. He just talked to you about his house. You're not gonna see that much. If you see copper, if you see galvanized pipe, that's an add-on. If the estimator didn't call it out, that's time where we go, wait a minute, is this something we wanna fuck with or not? You gotta decide. But if you feel like you can, you got the skills and you're willing to take that, then you get paid for it. So it is not just, oh, it's just gonna take me another hour. Mm-mm. No, this is plumber rates. And so go make sure you get paid correctly on this stuff. You just saw this up here, I don't know, I got baptism by fire on some of this stuff as a kid. There is a lot of different Odis. And before they started putting the colors in them, you had to sit there and really read those labels. And right now, I can't even tell you the first letter on this label. No, still can't, no. So you gotta watch what you're doing with that. I've been burned by using the wrong primer. I've been burned by using the wrong glue. I've been burned by, you pick it, I've done it. So, a couple things I wanna make sure you guys know. What I would recommend is that when you go in and there's, let's plumb up the sink, or let's change out the garbage disposal, an add-on opportunity for you is to say, I can change out the rest of your plumbing underneath. It would just be another, give yourself another hour, because here's what's cool about it, and keep this stuff on your truck. New stuff doesn't leak. Old rings, guess what happens to them?
They break.
They break, they get crimped, they get a little cut in them, and you're fighting that cut the whole time. You'd rather go back with all new. It's gonna make sure that your job's better, and all you're doing is telling them, peace of mind, I'm gonna make sure that this thing doesn't leak anymore, and you just add maybe an hour, maybe not even add the time, but add the materials in, because you know you're gonna be more successful with this. How do I know that? Because I have fought and tried to be a cheap ass and tried to use a fucking nylon ring in the middle of horse country Alpharetta, and then I had to sit there and get in my truck and drive all the way over to the Windward Parkway one. 2 hours later, I'm back, and the customer's still going, what are you doing? I'm like, changing out my ring, which I should have just had on my truck and done. These guys came out since we started the business. These are the green silicone ones. Get them on your truck. When in doubt with the OD stuff, Lagunda brought up a point, I was gonna tell you guys the same thing. If you're doing PVC and you're doing brick mold, or you're trying to get a crown mold to tighten up, that stuff works like champ. Just use clear. Use clear. Because
No problem.
primer will, I mean, when you start putting white primer over it, it takes 3 coats. Yeah. Do as Chris did, don't ever fucking do that. He does a lot of it. All right, the other thing, when you cut, what do we know after you cut with these things, right? You take your little hacksaw blade out, you cut them, what happens to those edges?
Burrs.
What do we need to do?
You do.
Gotta knock them down. Gotta knock them down. I know John knows that, because the last time we talked about putting that mow and flow in, you saw him deburr everything, because that's critical for shark bites especially, but that doesn't take but a minute.
And that's just with sandpaper?
Just a little sandpaper would do it good. You just wanna make sure you knock that burr down, because when you're sliding those rings over these guys. All right, do as Chris didn't do. All right, I had 1.25 inches coming out of the sink. I had, in this case, another 1.25 inches going out. It was weird. Usually you're seeing 1.5 inches. What did I put between my 2 1.25 inches?
1.5. Right.
I went, I opened it up to 1.5 inches, brought it down and reduced it back to 1.25 inches, because that's what I had on my truck, and I get a call back. Why did I get a call back?
Paper lock.
Vapor lock. Hey, my sink's just not draining, Chris. I just got done brushing my teeth and all the gunk's still sitting in there. That's what I heard. Went back, I'm looking, I'm like, what the hell did I do? What I did was, I went 1.25 inches out to 1.5 inches, and then back to 1.25 inches. This case was a little bit different. Typically, you got 1.5 inches going out the back. My recommendation to you is what Ed just said, open it up to 1.5 inches as quick as you can. When some of those vanity sinks, especially these cheap-ass vanities coming out of Depot, they're gonna be 1.25 inches. I'd recommend having some 1.25 inches on your truck with you, but I'd also recommend opening up to 1.5 inches as quick as possible. Because what's wrong with it having drained too fast? Nothing. It's more volume, it's easier, it's gonna keep you from having a problem.
So that was the problem by your pipe being smaller, it was draining slower?
So, yeah, it's,
There was a cavity in it.
so here's 1.25 inches, and I went like
It's like a
this,
bubble in the middle.
1.5 inches, and I came around, and then I went back into the wall, and I brought it back down to the 1.25 inches. So the water came here, got in here, but couldn't get out there. So what happened is the air locked it, and it couldn't move. So there was no way for that water to move. Because remember what happens in the walls, right? We all have the air vents out there. That's what allows our water to move, because we all have to have vent stacks, right? I would recommend, again, go 1.5 inches as quick as you can. Upsell wise, maybe a little bit of labor, but put the materials on it, and you're gonna tell them this, right? You got a better product with the stuff that's out today, guarantees it, and boys, tissue paper is your friend. You will always see it on a tissue paper when you test 5 times. Go ahead, Randy.
Well, just a question that, based on what you just demonstrated, I think I would look at what's going into the wall to determine am I going to go over 1.5 inches.
That's true. I don't see this as much, though. Do you see 1.25 inch exits as much?
Not anymore.
Not much.
Not really.
but When you do, you need, that's the one time I go with 1.25 inches.
Yeah, I probably, in this case, yeah, you're right. I would stay with 1.25 inch.
Otherwise, I prefer 1.5 inches.
Yeah. All right, Ed brought up hard piping. I would tell you guys, nobody's quoting that. But if you're gonna go back with what we all think is normal, remember, it's that hand tight and that 1.25 inch. And you can promise yourselves that she or he is gonna jam so much shit underneath that cabinet that is going to hit your pipe. And it's going to move your pipe. So underneath that sink, even though I know Ed's not a hoarder and has a lot of shit, most people are gonna shove a lot of shit in there. And then they're gonna go, guess what? Hey, I have a 1-year warranty and I have a little leak.
Your sink is different.
So, yeah, so we wanna watch that. All right, that was good stuff.